Welcome back to GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Monday, January 27th. If you were just tuning in, we just finished going over the fifth of six open coaching hires for the head coaching carousel in this year's NFL offseason, talking about the Cowboys bringing on Brian Schottenheimer, their former offensive coordinator, as their new head coach. In this segment, we turn our attention to the Pittsburgh Steelers. They've had a very interesting start to the offseason. Questions about the future of their head coach, Mike Tomlin, what they're going to do at the quarterback position that has plagued them for so long. We'll talk about what Art Rooney, the owner, said today in his end-of-season press conference, and much more coming up in just a second. But before we do that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Monday, January 27th. But like I was saying, we're going to get into the Pittsburgh Steelers and their offseason situations. One of the main points that I thought was interesting was the question to Art Rooney trying to decide or figure out what the plan is for the quarterback position. Now, obviously, this is the owner. He's not making these football decisions, but they do have meetings with the GM. So this is going to give a little bit of insight of how this offseason is going to go, especially at that quarterback position. He basically said they would like to re-sign one of the two that they have on the roster, that being Justin Fields and Russell Wilson. One of those two, and they'd like it to be a multi-year deal. Now, they both came to the Steelers in very different sets of circumstances. They were both down from where they were supposed to be. Obviously, Justin Fields, recently picked out of Ohio State in the first round, was on the Bears for a while, did not work out the way that the Bears expected him to. They dumped him off to the Steelers and went and got Caleb Williams. Russell Wilson started off his career amazing, was a late-round pick to the Seahawks, won a Super Bowl over there with Pete Carroll. Then he gets traded to the Broncos, and everything starts to go downhill. Gets paid a lot of money, then gets traded over to the Pittsburgh Steelers on a veteran minimum contract. After the Broncos cut him, they pick him up there. The starter this season started off as Justin Fields due to an injury, and he had a pretty good year. He went 4-1 on the season. He wasn't doing anything fantastic or special. Then you bring in Russell Wilson. He becomes the starter for the rest of the season, leads them to the playoffs, kind of struggles down the stretch. So neither of these options are one of them are ones that I'm looking at him saying, oh, I'm super inspired by the future of this team. Again, there were talks after this season about the future of Mike Tomlin, one of the best coaches in the NFL. How his future would be with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Mike Tomlin has one of the most impressive records in all of the NFL for never having a losing season over 20 years in the NFL as a head coach. That is incredible. But recently, they've been stuck around 500, around the purgatory of football, barely making the playoffs, getting absolutely destroyed in the first round, especially since the 7 seed was added as an extra bonus playoff spot. The Steelers are kind of stuck in the mud. They're grinding their gears here, and I don't know if this move to keep Justin Fields or keep Russell Wilson is really the option. But we'll go down is really the best option for this team. But we'll go down each road here, right? We'll start with the one that I think, especially talking a multi-year deal, the one that I think makes the most sense for this Steelers team. Keeping Justin Fields. Justin Fields came in, and what he was able to do this season was add that extra little bonus for that team of offense that they didn't really have in the seasons past. His ability on the ground with his legs, his ability to extend plays, and his ability to find guys out of the structure when the play breaks down behind that Steelers offensive line. Now, he's not the best at that. He isn't Patrick Mahomes when it comes to making plays like that. He's not Josh Allen, but his mobility and his that extra dimension that he adds, that rushing upside, is something that I think a lot of teams are looking for. And I think keeping Justin Fields around, if you're going to keep one of those two and have them be that starter, especially on a multi-year deal, that's the one I think you should focus on. Russell Wilson is an interesting one because Russell Wilson is a guy that I think is going to get courted by a lot of different teams. The Raiders, I've heard a lot of talk after they hire Pete Carroll. that's one that I think could be really interesting for him. He goes over there, gets to work with his old head coach in a situation that's probably just as good, maybe a little bit worse than the Pittsburgh Steelers, but they've got a lot of money over there to go help and build a team. So maybe that's something that Russell Wilson is looking at. If Russell Wilson stays, as both him and Justin Fields have said in their press conferences after the season that they would like to stay in Pittsburgh if given the chance, then this team looks, I think, the same, which is not what you want, right? This team needs a shakeup at the quarterback position. I think if the Steelers are going to continue down this track, the fans are going to continue to be unhappy, right? They'll have success. Mike Tomlin will coach this team with how good its defense is. They'll coach this team to a winning record, to potentially a 7 seed in the playoffs, but it's not going to be anything that really leads to long-term success. It's not going to be anything that you take a look at and you say they've done a really good job this offseason. I think this offseason is really crucial for them. We've seen this little tepper of a chant to get Mike Tomlin out of the building start to grow and continue to grow until now we're getting a lot of public sentiment. Some of these big networks, ESPN, some of these personalities on there are saying you need to let Mike Tomlin go. And I don't necessarily think it's going to be a bad thing for Mike Tomlin if they let him go, because he'll land on his feet. He's got a really good reputation. He'll go find another job. But for the Steelers, I think it would put them into a tailspin. They've done a really good job of finding head coaches. You're not going to find a guy like that just super easy, right? But if you continue to spin your wheels, you continue to stay stuck in the mud with this quarterback situation, it's not going to get any better. In fact, it's only going to get worse. They've been trying their best keeping that defense intact, and they have the money to spend, but I think now is the time that they go out there and they make a big splash at the quarterback position. Whether that means keeping Justin Fields and also going out and getting someone, whether that be later in the draft, getting a guy like a Jackson Dart, or whether that be in free agency, trying to target a guy like Kirk Cousins if the Falcons do decide to cut him, or maybe even trade for him. Maybe they go out and give a chance to Aaron Rodgers, get these veteran quarterbacks, and I know that doesn't seem like the table for them, but they need something that will really move them forward rather than keep them stuck here. I think the move for them is probably going to be to re-sign Justin Fields, give him that 3-4 year deal, not super huge money, so it's not going to be a huge investment, but then I would like them to go draft a quarterback. If they're going to continue to just roll out Justin Fields as their starter and say, that's good enough, which it'll be good enough. But at the end of the day, these players are getting older, right? The guys that are pushing them to this successful winning season every year, they're getting older. They're not going to be able to stay in the NFL at this shape forever, right? You need to be able to go get that guy that you can rely on. Go get the next Big Ben in Pittsburgh. Go get someone that can go out and win your team a Super Bowl. Because as it stands right now, this team with this quarterback situation is not winning a Super Bowl. And they really are a team that's a quarterback away. We talk about it all the time. The Jets are a quarterback away. The Broncos were a quarterback away. The Steelers are a quarterback away. But this is a team that truly is a quarterback away with how talented the rest of this roster is. And I hate to see talent get wasted like that. I think they need to make a big swing. This is probably not the draft to do it, but go and make a swing in this draft, either a late round or potentially next year if the same things happens. They go out and they trade up, trying to make a big trade, trying to get into the top 10 to potentially get their quarterback of the future. Not this year, because there really isn't that guy this year, but next year potentially, depending how the draft falls out. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Who do you think the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to go with? Do they take a risk and swing on Sam Darnold potentially? Someone that just had a huge season over there in Minnesota. I'd love to hear your thoughts. We're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we finish off our show with some news from the NHL. A massive trade has just taken place between contenders. Not something we see too often. We'll talk about what that was and what it means for those two teams at the top of their respective leagues. We'll be right back here on GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast.